Hi everyone, welcome to my studio. Today I want to work on this project. This is a maternity dress that I bought and I would like to jazz it up with some embroidery. So I thought I would film that process so that you guys can do something similar at home. So to get started, I'm going to lay down my dress on a surface that's nice and clean. And I'm going to use a washable, water-soluble marker. It's called a fine point mark be gone. It's just a little worn off there. And I'm going to use this marker to draw on the dress where I would like to do my stitching. Since sunflowers are so popular, I think I'm going to start with that. And I'm going to do 4 on each side here of the collar. Starting kind of at the top, I'm going to put my first circle of the center of the sunflower here, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. And these are more or less spaced out evenly. I'm not looking for perfection here or anything. And I'm going to do the same on the other side here. So I now have 4 circles on each side of the collar, more or less equally spaced apart. And it does not have to be a perfect, as I've mentioned. And remember, if you want to move the placement of one, it's water soluble, so all you have to do is wet a cloth and dab your fabric and these markings will disappear. So I'm going to get started with adding some petals to these flowers. I'm using a 3-inch hoop and I'm using DMC 3820, a nice sort of sunflower petal yellow. So I'm going to start at the top, unscrew my hoop. Take the smaller one, place it underneath the part that I want to stretch, and then place this outer ring on top, tighten it up, this fabric is mostly polyester, so it's really stretchy. Depending on what fabric you're using, it's going to be easier to stitch on than others. This one has a lot of bounce to it, so I'm just going to make sure it's as tight as I can make it, just to give myself a little bit of ease of stitching. So that feels pretty good. And as you may notice, it has caused my circle to warp a little bit into an oval. So just, you can keep that in mind and compensate for that while you're stitching. So I'm going to grab some embroidery floss. For this project, I'm going to use all 6 strands because I want my petals to be nice and thick looking. So I'm going to take a needle here, and you want a needle with a pretty large eye. So probably a size 3 or even 1. And I'm going to thread it through. And pull it to the end here. And I am going to tie them together. If you prefer to stitch, just threading your needle and then not tying the ends, you can do it that way, but this way I have 12 strands of floss because it's been doubled over, as opposed to just working with 6. So I'm ready to start stitching. Always start from underneath, and I'm going to start, you can start anywhere around your circle, come all the way through, and I'm going to do about a centimeter long stitch for my petal and pull it through. Now, even with this as tight as possible, this fabric is still really, really elastic. So I'm gonna have to just be more careful than I normally would be with my stitching and just go slow. I'm using my finger on the back side here to really help guide the stitches. And I'm just using a straight stitch for the petals. Some people might call this a satin stitch. It may take you some time to get the feel of whatever fabric you're working with, but once you kind of have a rhythm, that helps make the process nice and smooth. And again, don't worry about perfection here. Remember, it's a hand-stitched garment, so it's going to look hand-stitched to a certain extent, and that's part of the charm. In terms of washing embroidered clothes, I always recommend that people just hand wash them. Just to be on the safe side. I have actually found that clothes that I've embroidered, after washing them, the fibers seem to fuse together and just strengthen the bond between the stitching and the original material. Because a lot of people, I think, are pretty fearful that washing will damage their embroidery, but I've actually found the opposite. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't hand wash and just exercise caution. There's construction going on outside my window today, so I'm sorry if you can hear trucks. Okay, almost done. Awesome. So there's my first sunflower and petals, and I'm going to cut it at the back. If I can find my embroidery scissors, there they are, with enough space for me to tie it off into a knot. You can do 2 if it makes you feel a little more secure. And then I'm just gonna snip that off and put it in my scrap jar. Okay, so I now have both sides done. I actually ended up using a slightly lighter shade of yellow, DMC 743, for every other one, just to give it a tiny bit of variety. So now that we have all our petals done, I think I'm going to add some leaves. So again, I'm using my water-soluble marker, and I'm just going to do small leaf shapes. And I'm going to put 2 on each. And I'm going to alternate like this so the leaves go in different directions. And then back to this way. And so forth. Okay, so now that my leaves are all drawn on, I picked out 2 greens I'm going to use. So first is DMC 3362 and DMC 3011. And for the leaves, I'm going to be using fishbone stitch. If you're unfamiliar with it, I do have a short video explaining how to do that, but I'll just recap it now. So I'm going to start with the darker shade with my original color of yellow here. And for this one, I'm going to split the floss into 3s. So in half and then pulling it apart. So I'm going to thread the needle, and again, I'm going to tie both ends together so it's like you have 6 strands of floss once it's doubled over. And just like before, I am going to put my hoop down, ensuring both leaves are inside the stitching area. Make it as tight as I can so that it's easier to work with my fabric. And once I'm happy with how tight it is, I'm going to begin. So again, always starting from underneath. I'm starting at the tip of my leaf, coming up, and I'm going about a third or halfway down the leaf and straight stitch like that. And then I'm going to pop up, it doesn't matter which side. I'm going to go to this side here, just following the general shape of my leaf, and I'm going to do a stitch about the same length as my first one, but it's going to cross over the bottom. And then I'm going to pop up on the other side and do the same thing. And then I'm going to alternate again to the other side, following my shape, crossing over. And what this will do eventually is create the effect of a spine in the leaf. And because I'm starting to get close now to the petals, I'm just shortening these stitches and kind of tucking them in. I'll just do one more on this side. And then we have a cute little leaf. So I'm going to hop over here and do the same thing on this side, but first I'm going to tie it off. This fabric is pretty sheer, so I don't want a dark green line going across that you might be able to see. So because I still have a bit of floss left here, I'm going to tie this off and get started on this side. Okay, so now I've done the same thing with the other shade of green on the lighter colored sunflowers, and now it's time to do the centers. So for the centers, we're going to use French knots. We're going to do one circle on the outside circle in the darker color, which is DMC 839, and I'm going to demonstrate that now. So again, we're going to split the floss in half and split it and thread our needle. And we're going to do the same thing again, stretching our hoop over the fabric. To get it nice and tight. If you're not familiar with French knots, I have another video on my page which demonstrates how to do a French knot and some issues that you may run into. French knots are notoriously kind of hard to do, even though they seem simple. Okay, but we'll go over it again now. So again, you're starting underneath the fabric, you're coming up, and you're going to take your non-dominant stitching hand and wrap once, twice, and then you're going back down through the fabric next to where you came up. That's a big thing to emphasize. You're not going down through the same hole, because if you do, you're going to pop the floss back through. So I'll do that again. So coming up and wrapping once, twice, going down, and then I'm holding it really tightly to keep it in place and pulling it back through. French knots are especially difficult to do if you don't have an embroidery stand, because you have to put down the hoop. Fix that after. Just trim it now. So again, wrap once, twice, oops, once, twice. Keep screwing that up. Once, twice, and back down. Takes a bit of practice for sure. So I'm going to do this all the way around the circle. So I've gone all the way around, and I don't like the way it looks over here because there's a gap. So I'm just going to show you, I'm just going to fill that in real quickly with a stitch or two. And then it doesn't show up as badly. Okay, so that's the outside circle of French knots, and next I'll show you how to do the inside. So for the inside, I'm using DMC 611. You can use whatever you want. It's just a couple shades lighter brown. So basically all I'm doing is filling in the entire inside of the sunflower with French knots. So you can kind of start wherever you want. French knots are definitely the most time-consuming part of this project. And the most frustrating. So I'll just keep going like this. Okay, so I filled it all in. So that's the complete sunflower will look like. And now I'm just going to continue doing that same thing for each one of these flowers. So here's the finished dress. I hope you guys found that easy to follow along with. And obviously you can do this on any garment, another t-shirt or on pants or a skirt, however you want to apply the design. Okay, thanks for watching.